When board games give us more, we're rolling with more. Hi, I'm Will, and with me as always is the one who believes in poor spatial reasoning.
Sarah?
And today we're doing a review of Galactic Cruise Expansion 1 Advancements. Mm-hmm. Of course, I think it's said the other way around. Galactic Cruise Advancements Expansion 1.
Yes.
Yes. Sarah? Tell us a bit about this expansion.
All right. This expansion includes several modules that can be mixed and matched however you like, except the blueprint modules from both expansions, and so you have to watch our other video to see more about that expansion. They can't be played with at the same time.
So you're using a whole set of segments, and if you're using this one, this is the only set you can use.
Right. In fact, it replaces the base game.
Yeah.
So
it comes in a nice little tray, too.
It does. So if you have the base game with both expansions, you will have 3 trays of blueprints, and you can only use 1 tray at a time. So
yes.
That's just it. Okay. Otherwise, this expansion includes the cabin matching blueprints, advanced technologies, location bonus tokens, and then just more of the other components. So let's dive into all these different new things, starting with cabin matching blueprints.
So on the cabins themselves, normally in the base game, they're just cabins in the middle.
Yep.
And they would all line up, and that's where you put your guests. This now has cabins either on the left, middle, or right at both the top and the bottom sections of it. Mm-hmm. For a segment to be built into your rocket, the first one can go in because it's not next to any segment, but any other segments have to line up so that it forms a cabin in the correct spots.
Yep.
Because you can't have a rocket that has no spots for guests.
Yes, that is exactly it. All right, moving on to advanced technologies. So the technology tiles now have a track. You will start your cube, the little tracking cube, on the left side, which means that the ability is not as strong, but it also doesn't cost much.
Yeah, basically it starts at your basic technology as if you didn't have this expansion at all.
Right.
So don't feel like you're having a lesser technology to start with. You actually have the base technology to start with.
That's a good point. You are basically starting with the base technology, but as you use the technology tile, it improves and eventually gets to a point where the ability is better, but it also costs more to put your technology on it. So if you get your technology on it early, your development on it early enough, it'll be cheaper, but the effect won't be so great. But anyone who does it later will have to pay more to add their development to it to get that better effect.
Yeah.
Now there are location bonus tokens that get placed in this little notch on the left side of the action spaces. Now they start face down at each of the network locations, which is where you have the 2 actions. When a specific number of developments are adjacent, and it's different for player count, it'll flip over. And then when you place a worker there, you will gain that bonus for each development of yours that you have adjacent to that action spot, except the agenda card one, you would need a development on either side to get 1 card, but all the rest of them are gain whatever the 1 resource is per development you have. I think that's it. Otherwise, again, there's more agenda cards, tokens. There is a cockpit and engine that they add, and new expert worker tiles. And some of these things are going to be based on these new modules that get added.
Yes.
So let's go over how this changes the 2-player experience. So what do you think about the cabin matching?
So the cabin matching specifically adds a little extra time in the game because it's not as quick and easy to just drop segments into a rocket. You have to spend the time of picking out the right ones, and you're hopefully trying to get them to line up with the type of guests that you really want to invite, to match up with the crews. And all that just adds extra time filler. It doesn't actually add necessarily fun.
Right.
Just complications that you have to now tackle.
And for the 2 players specifically, it can get kind of bogged down because as we find in a lot of 2-player games, you're not going to get through the tiles as quickly. There's not going to be as many coming out because there's not as many players to buy them.
Yeah. Now, you can get through them. It just means now you're burning actions to do that.
Right. So it's just frustrating when you get a bad bunch where nothing lines up, or one player's able to get ones that line up, and then when the next player goes to buy stuff, there's nothing. Because that happened to me a couple of times where there was just literally nothing in the display that could make a single cabin. And that gets frustrating. And so I had to buy stuff, then new stuff came in, and then like Will said, I had to spend my next turn getting more of those cabins to just get one that made a whole one.
Yeah.
All right. Advanced technologies. It didn't really explain how to set it up for the different player counts.
Yeah, on the tiles themselves, they'll say like 3 players or 4 players.
It's 4 and then
3
and then 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
So you only need to worry about your player. If it's a player count that's not yours, like it's higher than yours, you skip those spots.
Yeah, or because some of them are on the left, you don't start on the left. They could have been a little clearer to tell you where to put the starting cube, because there were ones where I think I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but maybe there was an empty left-hand spot, but then there were spots that you had different player numbers under them, and so you skipped them. I think we had to read an example that finally clarified things a little bit.
I don't think there was even a good example that clarified them.
Yeah. So
basically 4 players uses all the spots. As you play with fewer players, you will skip any 4 players, and if you have even less than that, and like your 2 players, then you skip 3 and 4. Anywhere it shows 3 and 4, you skip those.
Right. Basically, those spaces don't exist for you to make the track shorter for a lower player count game, so you can actually get to the end.
Yeah.
Let me see.
We also found it a little tough to, a 2-player specifically, to start leveling up.
Yeah.
Like, because we got into the habit of, well, I'm really only going to use technologies that I'm on because I don't really want to pay someone else. That meant the person who's on there by themselves has all the responsibility of leveling up that ability.
Right.
And yeah, it can eventually get better, but sometimes those abilities happen so infrequently, where it took just so long to get it fully maxed out, or it just never did.
So we kind of
versus we did have one where it was so useful that we both got on there early, and it was practically maxed out at the beginning of the game.
Right. So something to think about as a variant, and I do believe this is in the book, that you just start at the end. So it costs more and is a better benefit from the very beginning. And so to get on it, it will just cost more, but then you have the better ability from the get-go for the whole game.
Yeah. The one thing that they didn't mention, that if you play with that variant, it's probably best for you to take out the agenda cards from this expansion.
Right.
Because a lot of the benefits from this expansion focused around using a card and then moving along technology tracks.
And if you're not moving up the technology tracks, then those agenda cards are pretty useless for the ability, and having that in just to discard for a resource is not that great.
Right.
Okay, I think that location bonus tokens. This also had the same kind of feel where they start face down, and then as you get the developments, then it unlocks. This was another one that took a long time to get them unlocked. And so this is where we also feel just start with them face up, because you still don't get the benefit until you have a development next to it.
Yeah.
So it already has a threshold you have to get over to even get the benefit. So it seemed weird to have an extra barrier.
Yeah. But the extra barrier did fall in line with other design choices throughout the game, because the way they design a lot of the stuff is, yes, everything starts off slow, and as the game progresses, you need things to move snappier,
Yeah.
which is why the AI develops the way it does, and the specialists start hunting you to bump you.
That's true.
To move them faster. Same thing with this, is they want the game to evolve.
That's true.
So it does make sense design-wise why they chose to do it. It's just in a two-player game, it felt so slow.
It felt slower than it should be.
Because it needs 3 development gears around that. That means one of us would either have to have 2 gears and one of us has to have 1, or you have to rely on the AI to put it, or you have to rely on the neutral to just have 1 there.
Right, which is just going to be hit or miss. So it's just one of those things to think about if you're playing it primarily as a 2-player experience. If you really don't like it where they start face down, just start with them face up, because you still have to get a development there.
Yes.
To get that. Okay, that's everything for the 2-player experience. Now, accessibility. The cabin matching are gonna complicate things, especially for those who have spatial reasoning issues like me.
That's why I said poor spatial reasoning at the beginning.
Yes, I get it now. It took me a moment.
See, it took a while for the evolution, for the game to evolve, so that Sarah gets the joke.
That's true. Advanced technologies, it's just hard to remember that when you utilize the effect of the tile, that you move the cube along. Because in every other, in a regular game, you just gain the benefit or whatever it is. It might reduce the cost of launching or whatever it is. You don't really think about, oh, I'm using this technology, not like something that's in front of you that you like flip over once a turn and then, that's it.
Especially when some of the technologies feel very, very passive.
Right. Some of them are very passive. So you use it almost without thinking. And so there were a couple points we caught ourselves and like, oh, we didn't move the cube up.
Yeah.
The other thing is, since, again, this is maybe more from a 2-player perspective, we sit on this side of the table, it's at the top end of the board, it's small and hard to see. So that is also a bit of a challenge unless you have someone sitting on that side, but then it's upside down to them, but at least it's closer to them.
Yeah.
The location bonus tokens, when you're playing a standard game, which I think is usually how you would play with the bonus.
Because it's good to have the randomization.
Well, now you have 3 tiles nestled together and you're putting a worker on the bonus tile space. Things get pushed apart from each other. And then also the fact that you're putting your worker on it, you can't see the icon. So it's like you have to be putting your worker towards it, see that this is the icon you get the icon before you cover, get the result or whatever the benefit is before you cover it up. Because then otherwise you're just picking your worker back up to be like, oh yes, I have to get this benefit.
Right.
So there's some accessibility issues there where the board might get a little bit more messy. And as we've discussed already, if there are variations you're using or not using certain modules, you'll need to adjust all the other stuff like the agenda cards and
maybe or not use the new rocket and booster that comes with this, because I think some of that also has something to do with the cabins.
I think,
or
yes,
something
you're
like
right.
that.
Yeah. So you just have to be careful of when you're not using certain modules or changing things up, all the extra little stuff that you would normally just throw into their respective sections. You might have to take them out, or if you draw it, everyone at the table just has to agree, toss it into like the discard or whatever, set it aside and let that person redraw a new one.
Yeah. Because they're also clearly identified, like on the agenda cards, that this comes from expansion 1.
Yes.
So
there's an icon for each expansion, and they are unique, thankfully.
Yeah.
So
you could just say, well, let's leave it in, but when it comes to like a player refilling them, if they see that option, they at that time have the option of going, nope, redraw.
Right. Exactly.
Could be as simple as that.
This could be. Okay, so before we get to our ratings, let's just kind of round up what we think, what our feelings, what we think about this expansion. So, cabin matching. How do you like it in our games?
I am neutral about it.
Okay.
One, I did say that it didn't add fun.
Right.
However, it does add time.
That's true.
And I do feel that sometimes the game moves a little too quickly. So for a 2-player game, I did appreciate having more time to enjoy the rest of the game.
Yep.
Even though the cabin matching itself didn't add to my fun, it added to the space that I had to have fun at different aspects of the game.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, it just added frustration because I just ended up having really bad luck and then my own spatial reason. I had to pick up everything and just line it up and be like, okay, it lines up, but is this what I actually want? Because for me, it added a complication that I didn't appreciate. It just made it harder to get the right types of segments into my rocket. So for me, yeah.
Okay.
Advanced technologies.
I like the fact that the technologies can develop into something bigger. I wish there was more levels to them, though.
Yeah,
because most of them felt like there's just 2 levels. There's
it is
the base and on.
Right, and that's pretty much it. And then the track, for me, I felt was too long in a 2-player game, so I would prefer just to start at the higher cost, higher benefit.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. If it had more benefits along the way, then I wouldn't mind the track.
Yeah.
So if it was like even just one more, like a midway, because I think most of the tracks were like 5 spaces. So if the middle space was actually what the end is, and then the end was something even better,
right,
then I would appreciate that. But I still really liked the games we played where we got to that better effect.
Yes.
Because that really felt fun, powerful, engaging, and like you said, it added, I don't know what the word is, depth to the game.
Right.
So that was good. The location bonus tokens.
Probably my favorite part of this expansion because it was neat just having more stuff and then having an incentive to build developments out onto that portion of the board.
Right.
Was a nice thing to have because it meant nothing to me if I had no gears on either side of the action tile.
Yeah, I would recommend playing it with the face up and just getting the bonus when you get the developments there. I think we put out more developments in the games that use these tokens than other games because we had more incentive to be like, yes, I want to get a benefit for just putting my worker on this space. And it felt really rewarding. Yeah, I just really enjoyed that.
Yep.
Okay. And I think that's everything because I don't think we really have much to say about the rest of it.
I always like having more options because this is one thing we didn't talk about. When you level or when you get the better worker, the specialist worker, they have some sort of ability. That ability changes from game to game because you have another tile.
Right.
And the game starts with a number of different tiles that you can choose, and these add to them. So it's nice to have that extra depth. The only thing that I found a little flat was the agenda cards because they were so reliant on like
the tracks
for technologies.
Yeah.
And if
I wish they had been more general.
Yeah, and if you're playing with a variant of, well, we're starting on full power, then those agenda cards kind of become useless in terms of their abilities.
Agreed. All right, so let's move on to our rating.
All right, we gave it 11. You gave it a 5. I gave it a 6 for the base game. Does Advancements Expansion 1 for Galactic Cruise change your rating?
No, it still is a 5. There are aspects of this expansion I like, but I don't like them the way they're originally presented. So almost all, like, I would more likely not want to play with the cabin matchings, and that's a big portion of this expansion. So if I had the choice, I'd be like, no. I love the bonus tokens, but they'd be face up, and the technology tracks, I'd be, let's start at the end. I don't care about the extra costs. They're just better, and I'd rather have them better from the beginning. So they do add, but not significantly enough for me.
6 stays 6 for me. I really like the game. I like the way it expands, especially the location bonuses. I like the technologies that they can get better. The cabin matching, I do and don't like. I like to have the option of having a longer game. So that's nice. I'm not thrilled with how the mechanisms work out.
Yeah.
But I do like the times that I can
I wish there was a
the
different way to give more time to the game for you.
Right. Maybe throw in another track.
Well, actually, we could just use the higher player level tracks.
That's true.
Because there's more cube spaces.
That's true.
That's true. All right. So we pretty much stay the same then. 11 out of 12. I think the only thing they'll say is, who is this expansion for?
Still the advanced players.
Yeah, it's going to be who wants more depth and options. That's what most expansions hopefully do.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the expansions for Galactic Cruise is they're not trying to just like tape on a whole new mechanism.
Right.
They replace existing elements, so you're still essentially playing the same game, maybe with just one little twist.
Right. They're enhancements, I would say.
Yes.
That give you more options, variability. And like I said, I think this could really add depth to some people's games because you have more complexity. Even if I don't always really like it,
right,
it does add to that, where you're right. It's not introducing completely brand new concepts and a whole new sideboard, but it's replacing what exists in the game with something a little different.
Yeah, because I've played so many expansions where it's essentially, well, forget like this portion of the game that
just
you've
take
learned.
that out.
Take that out. We're replacing it with something new, and a whole new mechanism. Like, okay, that's just going to be hard for me to fit into my brain, especially if I switch back and forth, or I like an aspect of the base. No, this is variation. Right. This is the same game, just tweaks and dialing it all in.
Yep.
All right, and that'll do it for us. And Sarah.
Yes.
When it comes to going into space, is there any way for you to use this expansion to maybe remember how to use the floating space or going to planets?
No, there's nothing in this expansion that like helps me remember the differences between a day in space and a day in a planet. It's just that extra little step that just does not stick in my brain. So,
but I think there might be something in expansion 2.
Oh.
Yes, so we'll have to see. And we've been rolling with more. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two. That's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.